Retro Now.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we're going to kick this Monday off with another episode in our The Clone Wars rewatch. Jay, you want to remind everybody what our social media contacts are before we get started?
Of course, Dennis. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. Digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output. Shield's down. We're now broadcasting the galaxy. I'm still recovering from my cold, so my voice is a little bit off. And we've been talking for like 2 hours, so I don't know how much voice I got left, but we'll find out. But anyways, we're getting back into the Clone Wars with a look at episode 4 from season 3, and that's called Sphere of Influence. This will be a full spoiler discussion. Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary for the episode, please?
My pleasure. As is frequently the case with the Trade Federation, they find themselves in another trade dispute with yet another world. This time, it is Pantora. When their blockade fails to bring the Pantorans around to the Trade Federation's way of thinking, Sib Kane, a separatist conspirator, kidnaps the daughters of newly elected Chairman Baron Papanoida to gain leverage. With assistance from Ahsoka Tano and Senator Chuchi, Baron Papanoia and his son successfully unravel the separatist plot, rescue Papanoida's daughters, and prevent Pantora from joining the separatists.
And that is our neat, tidy little summary of the episode. So we'll get into some more details in a second, but you want to go ahead and give your overall thoughts on this one?
Sure. So, first of all, it was great to see Ahsoka back in action again.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've had her around and on her own, too, for the most part, as even though she wasn't supposed to be there, quote unquote. And there's some really funny moments that surround that, especially with Anakin and Padme in the episode as well. But I liked it. I thought it was fun to see the expeditions, if you will, of Ahsoka and Chuchi together as they try to rescue or at least find out what had happened to Baron Papanoida's daughters. And of course, it's so much fun to see this character that was born out of George Lucas himself and Katie Lucas. And I believe Katie wrote the episode, didn't she?
Yep, she sure did.
Yep, that's what I thought. And the fact that they made him such a bad, he wasn't just going to lay down and not take action. He was pretty tough dude. And so were his daughters, which was really cool. So yeah, I liked it. A lot of fun.
It's kind of funny during the featurette that Dave Filoni does on the episode guide. He said there was things that he never thought he was going to do in life. One was make a Star Wars movie, which was of course the Clone Wars movie, and 2, it was like make an action hero out of George Lucas. And so as he animated him here for this one, but that aside, a couple things I want to address with what you said, and as I get through my overall thoughts. One, this is an episode that I don't remember being like terribly fond of in the past. And it was one like when I was doing a rewatch of the Clone Wars, I would always like, this could totally be on the background and I would not like sit down and say, oh, I have to catch this scene or anything like that. It was a fine episode, but yeah, Ahsoka's in it, but she's not really featured in it, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And so sitting down and paying more attention to it this time, since we were going to cover it on the podcast, I think it benefited from the last episode that we did where, Jar Jar and Bail Organa were trying to get relief efforts for the Twi'leks, and they were dealing with the same issues from the Trade Federation and the Separatists here. And with that background and understanding a little bit better about why things with the Trade Federation are so squirrely, I think it enhanced my appreciation for this episode. a bit more, especially since we also paid more attention to the whole episode, I guess, from season 1 when they go to Pantora, that
Mhm.
moon near Pantora, and they deal with the Talls there, stuff like that. So understanding Chuchi better, understanding the chairman that came before Papa Noida, that all helped. So all that's to say, I like this episode probably more on this viewing than I've ever enjoyed it before. 2, yes, Ahsoka's in this, but I feel like it's almost because they had to put her in this, if you know what I mean, because you had to have a Jedi character. I think I don't know how well this overall would have gone overall if it was just Papa Noida and family dealing with this crisis.
Mhm.
Uh, and that they could have probably made another episode featuring these characters without the Jedi involvement, but I think for an introductory episode for a character that we only saw as a cameo from Revenge of the Sith before this,
Yes.
they kind of had to include somebody for us to latch onto from the other episodes we've seen, because I don't know, I could just see what the backlash to that would have been at the time, even though I don't even remember what it was, if there was any at all for that matter.
Mhm.
But like I said, I like this episode. It was it surprised me how much more I appreciated it this time around with all the backdrop, and it really did benefit from the deeper dive that we did into previous episodes of the show, as opposed to if I just watched it in passing like I did in the past.
Mhm. No, I agree, and the Pantorans, again, were always kind of a species that I guess I had glided over in the past and didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to, and I think it's definitely because of, series like The Bad Batch, for example, that really made me wanna go back and dive back into that and pay more attention to it, like you said.
Mhm.
And as far as, putting Ahsoka in there as kind of the token Jedi, they did it in a good way, I think, though,
Oh yeah,
too, where especially with, as I was alluding to just a little bit ago, with Anakin and Padme and Ahsoka standing there, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this? And Ahsoka said, "Well, it does have to do with the Separatists." And Anakin said, "Okay, well, that's your kind of your way in." And Padme said, "Isn't that kind of like not doing the right, we're not doing the right thing here?"
yeah.
And
Should you go talk to the
Anakin's
Jedi
like,
Council
yes,
first?
he's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, we do
yeah,
this all the time, don't we, Snips?" And she's like, "Yep." And Padme goes, "I can't believe they let you teach."
yeah. That was a good line.
I cracked up at that. I thought that was so funny.
But the thing is that Ahsoka was not essential to the resolution of this episode,
True, very true.
in the sense that you know they this could have been a situation where Chuchi and a clone got aboard the Trade Federation ship and figured this all out. They made instances for Ahsoka to use her Jedi powers. She does a Jedi mind trick, apparently her first ever in this case, which was interesting. And then she uses the Force to levitate Chuchi when the two Trade Federation guys were out there looking for her. And that's great. But, you know, as far as being able to figure out what happened, it didn't necessarily require the talent of a Jedi for it to
Right.
happen in that case. So, it is what it is. This is the Clone Wars. The big three in this are Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, and big four if you want to include Padme and the like. And they got roles. It's interesting if you go back and you watch the credits, it's like everybody, with the exception of like James Arnold Taylor, who regularly does work on the show, got a voice credit on this. Matt
Yes,
Lanter did
and
Anakin
2.
and somebody else, and Nika Futterman did like a Twi'lek, and it's just everybody got some work on this, even if it was just a line or two. But it's like
Yeah.
poor James Arnold Taylor didn't get to do anything.
Right? Yeah, even
But
Ashley was another Twi'lek in
yeah,
there
yeah,
too.
they all got multiple roles and but at any rate, so I want to touch again on the whole Trade Federation thing, because it they drop some stuff in passing in this, and that it's like, what is the deal with the Trade Federation? They were the bad guys in the Phantom Menace, and then when we get to Attack the Clones, when the whole war shows up, we see Newt Gunray, he's with the Separatists, and yet the Trade Federation is allowed to maintain representation in the Republic Senate, and you know they drop just enough details here, but you really have to go behind the scenes, I think, in order to figure this out, because Lot Dodd is in the Senate defending the Trade Federation's interests. They've launched another blockade around another planet. And there's actually a debate about this in the Senate. After what happened in the Phantom Menace, you would almost think that it's like, why is the Trade Federation just allowed to do this? They claim
Right.
neutrality, but they
Over
are
and
still,
over.
yeah,
Mhm.
but they're still a member world of the Republic. It's just that, and so they've got representation there. Well, if you've got problems with a member world, why aren't you coming to the courts? Instead, you just set up a blockade and you don't let anyone trade with them and you start starving them out, just like you do with Naboo, which created all these problems to begin with. So, but what they point out is that, look, there was a unified republic, but now there's a republic and there's a confederacy of independent systems, also known as the Separatists. We're neutral between the two. We haven't left the republic, but we're doing business. We're not taking a side in this war, which it's a farce because we all know Lot Dodd reports to Count Dooku in this
Mhm.
case. So
Mhm.
anyway, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I think that's exactly it. I mean, of course, Dooku is working behind the scenes trying to get as many of these worlds to succumb to him as possible, and so he's got his little minions in there that are trying to do these kinds of things, and yet but there's other people that are, in the Trade Federation that are completely unawares as to what is going on here. So it's just like I think in any other kind of situation where you've got a couple of rotten apples in there that are kind of spoiling the entire batch. But in this case, it's because there's a much more insidious plot that's going on, pardon the pun, with Count Dooku and the whole 9 yards. So it's just yeah, but it does beg to the question, like you said, why are they even allowed to continue to do this? I mean, why don't they step in and the Republic steps in and says, "Hey, you can't do this. You can't blockade these people just because.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
we've already dealt with this. We dealt with this twice now. You're
right,
running interference between member republic worlds, and you're talking about your neutrality between the separatists and things like that.
yeah,
Pick a side. It's the why should we support your neutrality? I mean, I guess the response to that would be the Trade Federation is like, well, you need our stuff. You can't fight this war without the resources that we can provide. It just so happens that we're also providing to the separatists. I mean, the Last Jedi gets picked on when DJ is talking about, like, these people that are rich on Canto Bight. They're not just supplying the First Order; they're also supplying the Resistance. And so,
right,
but
hmm,
keep your indignation in check, type of a thing. But you would think on this galactic scale, when it's so out in the open, that somebody could do something about it. But I guess that is a statement on the corruption of world war politics, which we're not going to get into here. But the other thing about it is, it's just like, okay, the member of the Trade Federation, Sib Kane, that goes down for this at the end of the episode. Do you think he lived much longer after this episode?
probably not. I would say his expiration date was probably very close at hand.
Do you think he had a visit from like someone like Asajj Ventress?
Quite possibly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because he's got to know, like, Lot Dodd and the like are all in on this. I mean, he could
Right,
expose all kinds of people for leniency, and these members that.
exactly.
I mean, I don't want to pick on Naimodians in general because we know there's a difference between the Naimodians and the Trade Federation. Not everyone who's a Naimodian is in the Trade Federation. Not everyone who's in the Trade Federation is a Naimodian, but the members of the Trade Federation here, they don't have a sterling reputation. No matter how much Lot Dodd, he's the one that's defending them, and he's the biggest traitor of all at this
Right.
point. It's just everyone doesn't know it yet. I mean, he always shows up and gets all offended that people are accusing the Trade Federation of being involved in these nefarious plots, and he's like, "Oh, that's prejudice because of this." Duke Gunray is this extremist. No, you're one of them. We've seen you
Yeah,
actually report to Count Dooku.
exactly. Yeah. Well, of course he's gonna throw anybody under the bus that he possibly can.
Yeah, yeah. So the Papanoida and family, as you talked about earlier, we've got George Lucas was the character that portrayed Papanoida outside the opera in Revenge of the Sith, and that's where this call comes from. And then in that scene, he was accompanied by Chi Ekwe, who was portrayed by Katie Lucas, as you also noted, wrote this episode, and then his other children. were the inspiration for the other characters. So you've got Che Amanwe, who is based on Amanda Lucas, who has appeared in a number of Star Wars movies as well in bit roles. Senator Tar Tenniel in Episode 3 and other places. And then we have Ion Papanoida, who is based on Jet Lucas. And we also know him as Zet Jukasa, the Jedi that got cut down in Revenge of the Sith, and he also had a bit appearance in Attack of the Clones there. So what do you think about making an episode based on these characters?
Oh, it just made me smile, quite honestly, because, here is the maker himself being created into these characters. And I just think it's such a cool little homage to him. As you said, we got in the opera scene from Revenge of the Sith, and then
Yeah.
to take this and just sort of blossom it into this piece of Star Wars canon lore. And why not? I just think it's super cool to be kind of forever embodied into the story that way. And like I said, I think that it really showed as far as this particular family is concerned, and all Pantorans is what we've seen, because I mean, Chi-Chi is a fighter too, that none of them are going to just stand by and let things happen to them, that they will
Mhm.
fight for what they believe in, they will fight for their families, they will, they are very, very well able to defend themselves. I mean, as we even saw T Amanwe with a nice little, blaster hit to the shoulder on the one bounty hunter there at the end. So I just thought it was a very fun little breath of fresh air, because a lot of times you see like, oh, we need rescuing, and oh, what are we going to do? We are, a very important family, but yet we have absolutely no skills to take care of ourselves. So it was fun. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that there's no character that can have a small enough role that anywhere that can't not be turned into a much bigger character later in Star
Yes.
Wars. And because it's not like the camera stopped and focused on Papanoida outside the opera house. It just happened to be
Right.
one of those things that you noticed, and then once one person noticed, everyone learned about it. But it's not like that character was given a whole lot more attention outside of that scene, and then they developed it into this whole story, which is fine. Um, I know Corey Burton ended up doing the voice for Papanoid as opposed to George Lucas, which is makes sense because it had way too many lines of dialogue, and I guess George wasn't interested in voicing that. But
It
uh,
would've been cool if he would've, though. I thought about that.
yeah, yeah, George Lucas is always interesting. It's like so much of the time he's kind of soft spoken, but then you like get him deep into an interview, and when he's really got conviction about something, he'll really argue for whatever he wants to talk about. But I just don't think he's interested in the acting part of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
There. I mean, it was one thing for him to put blue makeup on for a scene or whatever, but that's enough to sit down and actually record dialogue, which, yeah, not not something he wants to do. But okay. I'm curious about the naming conventions here. So Chi, Che, and Ion. it's and they don't like necessarily enunciate a whole lot between the difference between Chi and Che. And I was really glad that the episode guide distinguished which one was which for us there. So I didn't have to sit there and track it through the episode myself. But I like the characters. I thought I Am Papanoida was a fun addition. That was, again, the Baron's son there. And, he's I don't want to say necessarily a hothead, but as you pointed out, these characters are like they're take action type of characters. They find themselves in peril, but they're just not sitting around for while they do need some assistance being rescued. Once they're in that, they take part in their own rescue there. But
Mhm.
Ion, while they're doing the investigation, it's like, you know, I I love it when they're on Tatooine. He's like, I don't want to die on this dust ball. just
Yeah.
just enough attitude there. He's you can tell he's someone who like he's proud of where he came from. He's proud to be part of the family he's in, and he doesn't suffer these type of indignities lightly. So I don't know. It's just kind of when you think back to the old uh, chairman that we got to see, get killed by the towels because he was so insufferable out there. It kind of gives you this idea that perhaps the Pantorans are what's the word I want to use? I don't want to necessarily say like arrogant like that former chairman were, but they are kind of prideful in that way.
Yes. Mhm.
I think is how I would describe it. And so, and not necessarily that it's all bad. It's just that he's, hey, yeah, you can be caring, you can be charitable, but that is part of their, personality.
Right, right. Yes, I was gonna say they're a very proud people, and I think Ion too is just young enough that he is probably just coming out of adolescence, and so as many young men are, I mean, you think about Anakin at that age, they're a little bit overconfident and maybe a little arrogant and, very naive in some ways, but yeah, he could also take care of himself too, but it was a nice kind of array of personalities as well, and a little glimpse into the Pantoran culture as well, because they were talking about the different types of artifacts that
Yeah.
I believe it was Chia Manwe that had picked up the one, and I think Papanoida called it the moon goddess
Yep.
or whatever, and that was the one that Greedo's blood was on.
Yeah.
So it was kinda cool to see that, oh, okay, they have these interesting artifacts, kind of fun. I wonder if any of them ended up in Luthen Rail's collection. Mm,
Quite possibly. Yeah. I don't
yeah.
remember seeing any of the episodes, and it wasn't certainly pointed out anywhere online that I noticed. But I did like that aspect of it that, the I can't remember his name, but the lieutenant that we've seen in the Senate murders episode
Oh, yeah,
previously.
that one with his little bots.
Yeah, his little nasally way of talking.
Yes.
But he walked in, the moon goddess little figurine is sitting on the table where it's not supposed to be, as opposed to the shrine. Didn't think of anything of it, but the that meant something. It's like, hey, that does not belong there. It belongs on the
Right.
shrine, and
Mhm.
so for it to be here, it's out of place. And so he picked up on it immediately and saw the blood on the bottom, and they scanned it and they led them to Greedo, and so we get Greedo's first appearance in the Clone Wars. What'd you make of that?
Well, we've said this before too, that it was at first I thought, "Oh, okay, well, he's speaking basic.
Uh huh.
Why?" But of course, it's because it's a children's animation, supposed to be for kids anyways, and so it just makes things a lot easier for him to speak basic. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it was obvious that he was part of this crime syndicate of bounty hunters and supposedly working for Jabba, and Jabba was not very happy with him.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
think
for
the
sure.
other thing when it comes to him speaking basic is that there's only so many characters you can have in an episode that don't speak basic, where you can pull the Chewbacca trick where he'll growl something and then Han Solo will say, "You said it, Chewie. Where did you dig up that old fossil?" Where they basically are like
Mhm.
working his dialogue in for the audience by turning what he said into a question or
Yeah, good point.
responding to the question by basically repeating back to him what he said and the answer. And when you got Jabba, they put up the subtitles for Jabba in Huttese, which is why did you bother? It's the
Exactly.
and then they have the droid, the protocol droid there in the episode. The mighty Jabba says, whatever. You didn't need to put up the subtitle in Huttese. That just okay, interesting choice.
It was indeed. Yeah, because you think about Return of the Jedi, and that was definitely not the case.
Yeah.
The subtitles
Well,
were actually the subtitles.
right, right. Or you just had 3PO, you know,
Translate.
translate for you, which is all you
Yeah.
need to do. But I don't know, they just kind of a kick. I was like, I guess if you want to learn how to spell Huttese, you could do it right there. But but with Greedo, the other thing is it's just you think about where we've seen him prior to this episode. We get to see him die in A New Hope when he confronts Han Solo, and then we see him in a deleted scene from The Phantom Menace where he accuses Anakin of cheating and gets beat up by
Right.
Anakin. And so, anyway, he kind of graduates a bit. He went from being amongst the lowest on Tatooine to a bounty hunter that's taking jobs that lead him to Coruscant.
Right. This is true. And taking others with him on top of it.
Right. So, so yeah, I mean, it's a fun episode. I do like the cooperation there. I think it created I mean, yeah, Baron Papanoida is not just now a chairman; he is a gunslinger. He shows up at the Mos Eisley canteen and shoots the place up. It was kind of fun watching Dave Filoni talk about that in the featurette. That when they created the cantina for this episode, they went back and they studied the cantina from A New Hope, and they realized how sparse it actually was. That when it wasn't full of aliens, it's really, really empty. And so they had,
Mhm.
and that kind of came across in this episode because there was only like a half dozen people in there when they
Yeah.
showed up there, as opposed to, 2 dozen. And without the band playing in the background, it really was just kind of like a cave almost in the way it turned out.
It's true. And I also appreciated the way that when they went to Jabba's palace as well, that you talked about, Papanoida being kind of this gunslinger.
Uh-huh.
He was also obviously very much a networking kind of person because he even called Jabba his friend.
Uh-huh.
And he appealed to him as a father himself kind of thing, but he said, "Jabba, my friend." So, and I don't think that that was, like a thrown away kind of thing, like, "Oh, my friend," kind of thing, like Hondo might do. It seemed pretty like we know each other sort of
See, I
thing.
took it a little differently. I think I'm not doubting that they had some sort of acquaintancy between the
Mhm.
two of them, but are they really friends? Or is that um, you've met this person and you now are going to do business with them and you soften them up by calling them your friend in
Mhm.
this case. When
Mhm.
there's still a difference, as you pointed out, from when Hondo says it, oh, my friends, which is, I am in so much trouble. I'm going to call you my friend to help, so you'll go easy on me. Whereas Byron Papanoida, it is, he's negotiating in this situation, which, yeah. And the other thing is, I'm glad you brought up that scene because he shows up there and Ion is like ready to find Greedo and throttle the information out of him. And
Mhm.
Papanoida says, like, wait, he asks the ladies about Greedo and they say he's not here. And then rather than just go running off after him, they're like, let's, if they're not going to lead us to Greedo, then Greedo will come to us out of this. And so they sit and wait, and then sure enough, that tweet goes right to him. And so he's got enough wisdom, enough street smarts to figure out how this is going to work. Basically, showing up and asking around is going to flush him out one way or the other.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
that characterization.
Yeah, me too. He wasn't just like some ivory tower kind of character, and that's what
Yeah,
I think I really liked a lot.
yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, this is a pretty self-contained episode. There's
Sure.
no real ramifications that come from this episode that we see elsewhere in there. I mean, it does say things about the Trade Federation. It does say things about the state of the war and how the Senate is working and stuff like that. But ultimately, I guess to some degree, most of the episodes are self-contained one way or the other. But at any rate,
Mhm.
it's a fun episode. Like I said, I had a new appreciation for this one that I didn't have prior to this viewing and our recent discussions of the Clone Wars.
No, I would agree.
All right. Any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything on this one.
All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up then. And just want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of this episode of the Clone Wars. Our rewatch is going to be ongoing. I don't know how many more episodes we're going to get done before the end of the year because we have a lot of end of the year episodes that we like to do. But if we don't get any more before the end of the year, we will be picking it up in 2026, which is just around the corner. And if you want to make sure you get those, make sure you've subscribed to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And once you've done that, we'd greatly appreciate your ratings and reviews, as that helps support the show and helps it get noticed by others. And if you want to find the entire back catalog of shows, you can go over to retrozap.com and you can find all previous 977 episodes. We're getting close to 1,000, Jay.
We
And
are.
yeah. And so, yeah, with that said, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and how else they can get in touch with us.
Absolutely. And just want to say a quick hello there to anyone who is new and is just finding Podcast Stardust. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can definitely do so on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And if you want to check out our full catalog of shows, you can go to retrozap.com, or you can also hit us up on YouTube Music. Some of the podcatchers only do about the last 100. So make sure if you want to go way back that you get one of those other servers as well. And YouTube Music also do support subscriptions and interactions. So if you've seen this episode and you want to drop us a little line and let us know what you thought of it, you can do so there. And you can also drop us a line at our email, which is podcaststardust@gmail.com. Please send us your questions. And when we have enough, we will put them together in a listener question episode. Love to do something like that as we head on into 2026. And you can also support the show by picking up one of 7 different show logo designs on our TeePublic store. And if you do happen to get something, please snap a picture and share that on your social media. We love it seeing all the Podcast Artist swag out in the wild. And once again, the link to that is in our show notes.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we are concluding our Revenge of the Sith series. That was our movie for this year with part 12 of that discussion. And then on Friday, we'll be getting into the week's Star Wars news. So, with that having been said, thanks for listening to episode 978 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be